And finally, I would like to say here that for any presidential candidates, if you were told today and you were approached that this is a time that currency in circulation is 3 trillion naira, while money supply is 49 trillion naira. If you were told that currency in circulation is only 6% of money supply, and that you are approached, bearing in mind that the central bank is autonomous and independent, would you go ahead and approve, one, that the currency should be redesigned and changed at this time, or two, would you look for other ways of reining in inflation and keeping the foreign exchange stable at this point in time? That is one. Those are some of the issues. But mainly and purely, what has come out clearly to most people is that there is a revenue problem, but there's more of a management problem. And the management problem has resulted from mainly nepotism. Nepotism because people want to put in their people from their own area, whether they are qualified or not. And even if they get into they are not fired, and there can be no discipline because the people are sacred cows because they come from certain areas. It will be important to address all of these issues because Nigeria has no time to waste. We are 115 or maybe less than 120 days to an election. And it is quite clear that the pressure on the economy is becoming unbearable. So I think the discussion today is quite clear, pretty obvious that time is run out. The economy is
of all sorts, modular and ongoing ones, and then at the same time ensure that the resources are invested in critical development areas like supporting MSMEs, education, health, and pulling people out of poverty. That's what I'm going to do in subsidy. On issue of oil theft, I've said those who are stealing oil are people in government. Because you can't steal oil, it's not something you put in your pocket. There must be a ship that will come and load it. I'm not an expert in it. But even the managing director of Nigerian Ports Authority said when the ships come into Nigeria, they remove what we used to dictate them. So can't our Navy dictate them if they remove their detention facility? So it is it's a crime we need to deal, and I assure you it will be dealt with decisively. On issue of exchange rate will be fought in two ways. One is fiscal responsibility. As long as we continue the way we are going with fiscal rascality, printing money and throwing it, by the time you remove subsidy, deal with the issue of oil theft, which will make you earn more foreign exchange, deal with the issue, other issues, like what I said, move from consumption to production, you're able to make more money. If you export more and you're able to have more foreign currency, you manage and stabilize your foreign currency.
Next, Mr. Kola Abiola.
Thank you. I think first we need to decide what kind of economy we want. Do we want a market-driven economy or want a public sector-driven economy? Because that determines the kind of policies we embark on to solve the economic problem. If it's market-driven, you want it to raise capital globally. And that is the beginning of your answer. Doesn't necessarily mean government cannot intervene from time to time. The biggest capital economy, market-driven economy, the US to date, you still have government interventions from time to time. Very recently in England, this Bank of England came in to buy bonds to help deal with their interest rate problems. So there's many of that going on. If we're going to be a market-driven economy, we must be able to use that to set up a strong capital market. And from the capital market, you will get your bonds that you require to fund Naira-based bonds to fund a lot of your infrastructural development. Now, To create that, you must decide whether you want to create jobs and how you want to do those jobs to sustain the level of activity and sustain growth within the economy. At PRP, our own Marshall Plan is a massive infrastructure development that will create jobs. There will be massive infrastructure in every regional set. We have 6 regions, and all the 6 regions. But more importantly, we will manage that by making sure that we stop subsidizing consumption, but production that adds value to development. Also, we want to have an economy that decides for once to make sure that Nigerians are a stakeholder in its growth. So, for example, you will have people, instead of subsidizing consumption, the subsidies can go into mortgages, building homes. Additionally, with workers and their pension funds, interest rates could be subsidized for them, and making sure that those things are planned and applied to things that can actually give you a stake in Nigeria, but more importantly, create jobs as we go. It's all about sustainable growth. Now, the Forex is a big problem. You can't have the biggest earner of foreign exchange in Nigeria, which is our oil and our crude, go up and down from time to time. Like during the COVID, it was at the lowest, but your exchange rate remained fixed. There's something wrong with that mechanism. You cannot have an exchange rate that is fixed, that is twice, if not more. The black, gray, white market, or whatever you want to call it, is about 2.5 times your fixed exchange rate. There's something very wrong in that mechanism. Something has to be done to deal with that. Now, if you don't address those things, your inflationary factor, for example, is it the exchange rate? Is it because we're we're an import-based economy, and because of the fluctuation in the exchange rate, is that why you have the inflationary factor we have? You have to decide that. Is it because we have a lack of infrastructure, so the cost of food is expensive because we don't have the roads? 60% of the economy of the country is flooded today. There's no security also. That has an effect on your cost of food. And those are putting pressures on inflation. And at the same time, if you don't figure those, you'll be giving Panadol for what is not a headache. You need to figure out those things and then address them. And that's where we will start from to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pap. Please pay attention.
Thank you very much.
Time allotted is 3 minutes.
Now,
each.
all theft. We are going to stop anything that has to do with the stealing, from the villa to civil servants to contractors to all our assets, including the oil itself. We have so much that is happening in this country. The records that is available to us, we have seen even solid minerals being shifted or transported out of the country on daily basis. So it is very critical that we work on how to stop stealing of oil and other assets owned by the nation. Now, the issue of subsidy, yes, we are all aware that there is a lot of corruption in that field. And our first area of attack in that area on the issue of the subsidy is the issue of corruption. Of course, subsidy overall doesn't do any good to anybody. But we are at the same time concerned with the welfare of Nigerians. We are going to create necessary palliatives to ensure that even if we take it away, and it is very necessary in the long term that it has to be removed, so palliatives that our administration is putting on the ground is there. Now, the issue of exchange rate. You see, in economy, there are so many things that are intertwined. It's not one thing, it's not two things. The issue of exchange has to do with so many things. Has to do with the corruption that is going on in the nation, has to do with even the oil theft. As we have heard, we have 2.2 million that we are supposed to give out or send out going by the OPEC arrangement. Now the record we have is much less than that. So we have to do whatever it takes to stop stealing. And I know ordinarily somebody should ask, where do we get money to fund the issue of 1 million military, 1 million police, free education, and so on and so forth, that we are going to do when we have the opportunity, especially in the area of forms that people are buying. The issue of NECO, WAEC, and other examinations in our blueprint, we have made it clear that no Nigerian child or student will pay such money, because we know the consequences of what has been happening in the country. We also say that even JAMB should stay for 4 years, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's now the turn of the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, with Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, Governor of Delta State, standing in for him. You have 3 minutes.
On the issue of subsidy, I think that, as my colleagues have said here, there's no doubt that there's a scam there, because I do know at a point in time we're doing over 90 million liters per day, which was not possible. And when we interrogated that, they dropped it to just about 60 million liters per day, which is also not possible. So obviously there is a crime in that particular place. But what I think we need to do is to quickly find ways to enable refining of products in Nigeria. Dangote Refinery is already on track on that. So we must do everything possible to enable him take off as early as possible next year. I'm informed that he's going to take off early next year. We're there at the fertilizer plant when it was brought to life. And I think that anything that's an impediment, government ought to, realizing that they are losing a lot through subsidy, government ought to find all possible ways of encouraging him and getting that refinery to start. It's very important to do that. And then we must encourage modular refinery, because with the kind of capacity that he has, if we're able to drive up to 650,000 barrels per day, that will likely reduce the effect of subsidy. It will no longer be there. But whether it's necessary, at the moment, it ought to be necessary, but it's something that has to be taken up, because we are not rich enough to subsidize it. You can't borrow money to do subsidy, because at the moment we are borrowing for everything. Everything, every capital expenditure, even for the subsidy we are borrowing. So that's not the pathway to go. Then concerning the oil theft, it's of 2 types. You have the organized crime that is top-based, where people are able to take crude oil through vessels and out of the country. Then you have the illegal refining that is going on. All these things come from, truly from, they take crude oil from the pipelines. So we need to have a pipeline surveillance system that is credible and that could make that could work. In the first instance, the application of technology is something that ought to be looked into. But before then, the people who were involved in the pipeline surveillance in the past, it was also a criminal approach to the whole thing. They were actually doing nothing and just casting away money. People raised their voices when the new contract was issued, but a lot of things are being unearthed at the moment already. So I think that we can look into all those issues, and if we are focused and we want to do the right thing, we will definitely be able to stop that within time. And then coming to the exchange rate issue, if we produce and we are no longer subsidizing oil and we get the Dangote refinery to start working, if we privatize the refineries that we have, which are not working, we cannot continue to do turnaround maintenance. I'm sure that we'll begin to save a lot of money. we produce for export, we begin to earn, and we spend less on import. That's import substitution. That is very important. It's very important. When you go in that direction, we'll be able to have enough resource in terms of dollars, and we will not be in the situation that we find ourselves. It is very criminal to have 400 and something naira to $1 in the official rate, and the BDC rate is twice that amount. It's criminal for any economy. The economy cannot grow, and we cannot go in that path.
Okay, I recall that quite in the